Good afternoon. My name is Marcus Downs. I am a State Director of Government Affairs for Takeda Pharmaceuticals America Incorporated. I want to first acknowledge Madam Chair President, Representative Gilda Cobb-Hunter. I want to also acknowledge other members of the Executive Board of the NBCSL. Finally, I'd like to acknowledge those individuals who are members of the NBCSL and who are viewing us virtually. Thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to share with you who we are at Takeda. I first met Representative Gilda Cobb-Hunter about 3 or 4 years ago at a Women in Government meeting. We actually happened to be on the same flight. I think I shocked her when I reached over and introduced myself to her, but since then, and I believe it was 2017, we've become good friends. I've traveled to meet with her in her home district of Orangeburg, South Carolina. She's welcomed me graciously. Last year at the annual meeting in Florida, she welcomed Takeda again. It is a very good relationship. I'm privileged to call her friend. With me today, I'd like to introduce some friends that I have on staff at Takeda. I'm going to introduce each person. I'll tell you what their titles are, and they will introduce themselves and share some important information about who they are and what they do for the company. So we're going to start with Uthra Sundaram. She's the Executive Vice President. She's Head of Global Product and Launch Strategy. Next, we'll hear from Brandon Monk. He's a Senior Vice President. He's the Head of Plasma Derivative Therapies, United States Business Unit. And then finally, we'll hear from Javier Barrientos. He's the Head of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion in the U.S. Business Unit. Javier is our newest member, but I tell you, he's incredibly gifted at what he does. And so with that, we'll proceed. Uthra.
Thank you so much, Marcus, and hello, everyone, and thank you so much for the opportunity for us to talk about Takeda and what we do and the values that drive us. My name is Uthra Sundaram, as Marcus said. I've been with Takeda 4 years, but have been in the pharmaceutical industry for now 15 years. I would say my role right now is driving the product strategy for our pipeline, but also our therapies that we have right now in the market. And it is grounded on the patient journey. That's how we build our strategies. And the patient journey takes into account the transformative nature of our therapies, but also understanding the pain points along that patient journey. And every disease has a very unique patient journey, and every patient has a unique journey. But understanding that patient journey is critical as we build our strategies, and also making sure that as we put together the meaningful solutions around these therapies, we are able to then fulfill the promise of our current pipeline and the inline products as well. So excited to talk a lot more during this 1 hour. But with that, I want to hand it over to Brandon.
Great. Thanks, Uthra, and just echo the appreciation and pleasure to be here with everyone today. You know, we wish we could all be here live, but this is a great format for us to connect. You know, like Marcus said, I lead our plasma-derived therapies business unit in the U.S. I have the honor and pleasure of doing that for the last 10 years, or at least being in this business for the last 10 years. And this is really a unique business that relies on, you know, the grace and the donor pool who actually provide plasma-based therapies. And it's a very complex process. Happy to talk more about that today, and a little bit also about what we're doing in COVID-19 to hopefully, you know, fight the battle. So thank you for having me. And with that, I'll turn it to Javier.
Hi, everyone. It's such a pleasure to be here with you. And thank you, Marcus, for the opportunity. As Marcus mentioned, I am the head of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion for the USBU and GPALS and the U.S. as a whole. And my role as head of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion is to steward that journey and strategy where we want to position Takeda as a leader in this space. And you know, later I'm going to be talking to you more about the specifics of what we see in that journey and how we intend to get there. For now, I'm going to turn it over to Marcus, and it's a pleasure to be here with you all.
All right. Thank you once again to my friends from Takeda. I'd like to tell you a little bit about who we are, what we do. You know, our goal is to explore potential partnerships with the NBCSL. Takeda is a 238-year-old global values-based science biopharmaceutical company. We rely heavily on the science. I want to tell you, we've got about 50 employees around the globe, and we have operations in about 80 countries. We are headquartered in Japan, but our United States headquarters is in Cambridge, Massachusetts. This meeting was actually planned to be live in Georgia. Georgia is a very special place for us because we have a state-of-the-art manufacturing facility located about 40 miles outside of Atlanta, something that we're very proud of that's in Georgia. We also have facilities in Minnesota and California. I want to go back to our Georgia facility a little bit, and our panel will discuss this in greater detail a little bit later. But, as we all, deal and contemplate the existence of this new COVID factor, the Covington facility is actually manufacturing a therapy that's been in process since May of 2020 as members of a group called the Alliance. Again, our panelists are going to go into greater detail about that. But I kind of want to share with you what some of our goals are as we visit with you all this afternoon. As I've stated, we want to share who we are as a company. We want to focus on something called PTRB. You'll get to learn about that. We'll discuss some of our key therapeutic areas, and we'll also share with you what our efforts are in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion. We have every intention on addressing some of the challenges that exist with COVID, particularly among the African American community. And hopefully, we'll be able to build on our existing relationship with Takeda and NBCSL, and you'll look at us as someone that you can call friend. So with that, I'm gonna ask Uthra if she can weigh in on something. You've heard me reference PTRB. Uthra, do you mind sharing with our viewers what PTRB and what it stands for and what it means to Takeda?
Yeah, definitely would love to, Marcus. And this is one of the reasons I am at Takeda and I work for Takeda. And it is really our values and what has really shaped this company for many, many years. As a global biopharmaceutical leader, it is important that we have a strong corporate philosophy. And so our culture is rooted in an ideology, and we call it, with affection, called Takedaism. And we were founded, and you saw in the video, around 200 plus years ago in 1781. And this has been the pillar of our values. And Takedaism means acting with integrity, with fairness, with honesty and perseverance. And it's grounded on those values is our mission. And our mission is to strive towards better health and a brighter future. And it's for people worldwide through leading innovation in medicine. So we really want to make sure we are bringing transformative therapies, but also bringing meaningful solutions beyond the therapies as well. And our vision is to serve the needs of our patients wherever they are and whoever they are. And so we're not just discovering and commercializing transformative therapies, but it's more important that we make them accessible. And that's really something we are aspiring towards. And going back to Marcus' question on PTRB, so we have a decision-making framework. And P is actually putting the patient at the center. T is building trust with society. R is reinforcing our reputation. And B, finally, is developing the business. And they follow in that order. So when we are making a decision with the PTRB mindset, it's all about asking the question, is it right for the patient? And then, does it help us build trust and reputation with society? And if we do all those three things, we know the business will follow. And so we use this framework to make decisions and to ensure our commitment to quality, but most importantly, making sure we do the right thing all the time. So that really encompasses what we stand for and what we're very proud of at Takeda. Marcus? I can't hear you, Marcus. You might be on mute.
I am. Thank you so much. I was just thanking you for what you were sharing, and I was saying that it's one of the things that makes me proud to be a member of the Takeda staff. I was wondering if you can identify a time where you've actually seen PRV at work with the company. If you could share any of that experience with us, please.
They always say, right, you're put at your values are tested the best when you have when you're in a crisis or when you're in the toughest times. And I would say this year has really been an eye-opener for all of us, and it has tested us as a company and our values. And I'm proud to say our efforts around COVID-19 are a testament to our fundamental pivot to our values. And so when we were really addressing COVID-19, some of the efforts that we wanted to really focus on was not just business continuity, but more importantly, were we there for our patients? And were we supporting our patients across our portfolio and helping them stay on therapy, especially as we think about some of the rare diseases where we have our therapies, where there's such a high unmet need, and these patients need to stay on therapy to address their disease. And I know Brandon is going to talk about the COVID-19 partnership and the alliance where the industry has come together to say we need to really band together to ensure we can address the complications due to COVID. And I'll have Brandon speak a lot more, but this year has been a true testament that has tested our values, but it also has reinforced what we stand for and what we believe in.
Thanks, Uthra. Takeda is one of the world's largest biopharmaceutical companies. I was wondering if you wouldn't mind describing some of the areas of your.
Yeah, it's a great question, Marcus. And one of the things that we're very deliberate about at Takeda is we want to be focused. We want to be in an area where we are experts, we are leaders. And so our R&D focus and our efforts are on 4 therapeutic areas. It's oncology, it's rare genetic and hematology diseases, it's neuroscience, and it's gastroenterology. Those are the 4 key therapeutic areas. But we also make targeted R&D investments in plasma-derived therapies and vaccines. And so we are focusing on developing highly innovative medicines by advancing the frontier of new treatment options. But we do that by leveraging a very collaborative R&D engine and to create a robust, modality-diverse pipeline. And to do that, we absolutely leverage on our internal research capabilities, but it's also important that we engage actively with a very innovative ecosystem around the world. We know great innovation is happening outside the traditional industry as well. It's in the academic area, and we want to leverage that. So we are investing approximately around $4.5 billion in R&D each year, so we're committed to innovation. We have a diversified modality in our research and development, so it goes all the way from small molecules, which is very simple, but to gene therapy. And so we're trying to really make sure we are understanding very complex modalities. And there are areas where we will be leaders, like the microbiome space, where I know we are going to be really one of the first trailblazers in understanding the mechanism of microbiome and the role it plays in the human body. And we don't do this alone. We know we need to partner, and so we have over 200 active partnerships. And we have a robust clinical pipeline of novel mechanisms that I'm truly proud of, and around 40 new molecular entities in the clinical stage assets. So really excited about the commitment and the responsibility we have in these areas of focus for Takeda. And I know I understand the theme of this conference is creating systemic collaboratives, and I can speak about that from experience. I know of an instance, and there's so many at Takeda, but one of the instances is in the area of stem cell therapy. In Crohn's disease, which is a GI disease, one of the most debilitating complications is complex perianal fistulas. And if you talk to any gastroenterologist, one of the things they dread their patient to have is perianal fistulas because it's very tough to treat, and surgery is really not the best option. So we have a stem cell therapy that we have launched outside the U.S., and we have a phase 3 study, a late-stage study happening right now in the U.S., which I'm very excited about, which can actually provide a great solution for these patients. But this medicine came from a successful partnership. It came from a partnership from a company that understood this disease and was committed in really making a change in that patient journey. And it went from a licensing deal where we were partners to an acquisition. And one of our models in partnership is we have to win. We have to win, and the partner has to win. So it's a joint win-win proposition. We take a lot of commitment in that relationship, and this partnership grew, and it strengthened over time. And ultimately, this journey made sense for both companies because it created more value, it created sustainable growth, and more importantly, we were able to really together bring innovative solutions for patients. So I can say, there's definitely room for partnership, not just in the research and development area, but more importantly, partnerships to understand our patients because they have very different needs. And this quote really sums it beautifully. If you want to go fast, you go alone. But if you want to go far, then you go together. And together is really how we have to really bring the fulfillment of our pipeline. Over to you,
Luther. I think that's fantastic, and I love that quote. And you talked about partnership. One of the other things that I think particularly affects the African American community is access to care. Not be made aware of the challenges that are out there. I'd like for you to comment on how Takeda finds out about some of the challenges that patients are facing. If you can expound on.
Yeah, thanks, Marcus. And I have mentioned that earlier as well. One of the things we are really committed to is not just being innovative and bringing such great transformative therapies, which are either going to be first in class or best in class. And we take pride in that. But for us, it's our responsibility that we have in bringing those therapies to the market, which means they have to have access. Patients need to be able to use these therapies. And so one of the things we have done is really making sure we work closely with patient communities and understanding the challenges that patients face, especially around access to medicine. And one of the examples, Takeda, that I'd like to call out is the State Access to Innovative Medicines Coalition. We are a member of that. Some of you might be familiar with them as well. They are a group of patient organizations and provider groups, as well as the pharmaceutical industry, that focuses on passing laws to create patient protections when insurance companies impose step therapy protocols. And this is one area that Takeda is very passionate about. It doesn't matter which therapy. We strongly believe that the right patient should be given the right therapy at the right time, and the physician and the patient need to be very instrumental in that dialogue in finding and identifying the right therapy. That is critical, and nothing should really upset that dynamic. And so these laws are put in place. They're protective guardrails that help patients access the medicines their doctors have prescribed when insurance companies can use this utilization management tool. And so we're very proud of our membership there. We're very proud of some of the work that's happened and the progress we have made, and we'll continue to keep that focus going forward. In my role as leading a function that does global strategy, I will be looking to see how do we expand our reach to build these new partnerships with our products that are coming in the pipeline in the next 2 to 5 years, which is something that we are committed to. And it's important to note that Takeda wants to continue to build these partnerships and look for ways where we can actually reach out to patient communities. And I do want to talk about, I know Marcus mentioned about this, about diversity, equity, and inclusion and the role that it plays. Our goal is to find more ways to collaborate so that we can create better health outcomes. And COVID has been such an eye-opener. We knew this always existed, but COVID has really been so explicit in really calling out the health disparities, the inequities that exist across our healthcare continuum, especially as we think about the African American community. And so we have to continue to make strides. And there's so much more work that needs to be done. And it starts very early on. It starts with our trials being much more diverse, much more inclusive, and so that it can better reflect the patients we serve. At Takeda, we are committed to creating a more diverse, equitable, and inclusive culture, not only within our walls, as Javier will talk about, but also with our communities. And it starts very early on, and it also needs to then encompass the clinical trials globally as well. So it's still a lot to do, but it's a company that is committed to making a change and really making a difference and showing leadership. So thanks, Marcus.
Luther, thank you so much. And for those members of legislatures who are participating with us, I do want to take the opportunity to highlight and just bring to your attention one of the areas that she discussed earlier, and it's part of the same coalition, State Access to Innovative Medicines. Many of you in your individual state legislatures have voted on fail first therapy or step therapy when it comes to individuals being able to access their medicines. That is an example of the work that we do in each state legislature. I believe right now 29 states have passed some form of step therapy, which allows an individual to access medicines without having to fail something before they're able to get on what the physician has actually prescribed. I want to just make a very clear line that this isn't something that compromises what the insurers or the PBMs need to do. They can still proceed the way that they need to, but step therapy and fail first simply provides exceptions. So I just wanted to provide a point of context for something that might be a little more familiar to you. Now, I'd love to hear from Brandon Monk. Brandon, I know that you are incredibly busy these days, and I'd love for you to share with our audience, what you're learning about COVID, particularly in the African American community.
Thanks, Marcus. I guess what I would say is I think we can all agree that COVID-19 has had such an amazing impact on all of our lives, how we live, how we work, how we school, ultimately how we relate to one another. I think we've also learned that during the global pandemic that COVID-19 is having a disproportionate impact across different communities, such as the African American community. Certain chronic conditions like high blood pressure, diabetes, stroke, which disproportionately affect African Americans, carry an increased risk for more severe cases of COVID-19. As a result, COVID-19 is affecting communities of color at an alarmingly high rate and ultimately results in higher rates of mortality. Marcus?
Yes. Brandon, those are some pretty staggering statistics. I was wondering if you can share what Takeda is doing to be a part of the solution as we make it through these COVID times.
Yeah. Thanks, Marcus. Absolutely. I think Takeda has focused on really three big priorities since the outbreak of COVID-19. The first was making sure that our employees were safe, secure, and their families, as well as thinking about how we reduce the impact of ultimately spreading the virus, throughout the healthcare system. The second big priority was maintaining continuity of business, especially in order of supplying patients who are in need of Takeda's medicine and therapies. I think we can all agree that COVID-19 represents a pretty significant and urgent threat globally. And as we look at our own capabilities, whether it be from our supply chain, during the pandemic, or how we show up in the communities, ultimately we need to keep the patient at the center of what we do and making sure that we're reaching them at the right time, at the right place, with the right medicine. What was also really important is to make sure that our manufacturing facilities, Marcus, you mentioned our facility down in Covington, Georgia, also our BioLife centers throughout the course of the United States, as well as how our commercial teams show up, whether that be live or virtually across all of our many businesses, that we're there ultimately to be able to serve the patients that we serve, but also make a really safe environment for our employees that we ultimately don't spread the virus. And the third thing, and that we really were looking at, is what can we do as an innovator to potentially bring therapies and treatments to potentially prevent COVID-19. So you'll hear a little bit in a minute about the COVID-19 Plasma Alliance, and we're really excited about that. But there's also a lot of things that our R&D organization has done both internally and externally, partnering with scientific partners and partnering with the community to say, do we have existing assets or products in our pipeline that could also be really helpful? There are a couple of products that we have today, Firazyr and Takhzyro, that we're looking through clinical trials, either initiated or planned, that could be, helpful treatments with COVID-19. We're also engaging, externally across the industry, and I think this is just so critical and a big learning for all of us is just how do we collaborate, engage as a broader industry to look at advanced therapies, treatments, vaccines, anything we can do, because we do believe that multiple options right now are really, really important. And whether they're a Takeda option or another partner's option, I think we've all been there to support each other. So hopefully, Marcus, that helps a little bit.
It does. You actually whet my appetite on something that you mentioned earlier. I know over the past several months, lots of people have been hearing the term convalescent plasma. One of the things that Brandon also mentioned earlier is that we have BioLife plasma collection centers. We're in the plasma business, among other things, but Brandon, would you please talk a little bit about convalescent plasma's role and what we're doing now nowadays?
Yeah. Absolutely. So I think the pandemic, obviously, we talk about the unprecedented global efforts that are underway, and as many probably, before the pandemic, the term plasma or even convalescent plasma, I think, didn't necessarily roll off the tongue real well. But I think if people remember that, some of the first therapies being used within hospital centers or even around the world were used what we call convalescent plasma to treat COVID-19. Convalescent plasma is blood plasma from individuals who have fully recovered from COVID-19. The way I think about it is it contains a really high level of antibodies that an individual produces to help fight off the virus that ultimately then could be used and shared with folks who are obviously sick at the time. What we're doing, and what we really think, is by pooling together convalescent plasma from many, many recovered donors and concentrating those very specific antibodies, that we can make a potential therapy that may be able to help people at high risk for serious complications of COVID-19 and better fight the disease. We've been a leader in the plasma-derived therapies business for over 75 years now, in not only the development but also the manufacturing and the collection of plasma-based products. And we feel really compelled during this time that that scale, the expertise, the knowledge in working with our regulatory partners is just really important and also very helpful. We also have a global plasma collection network. Marcus mentioned BioLife, which operates in more than 140 centers in the U.S. as well as in Europe. And demand for these plasma-based therapies has really increased over the last 15 years. And in wake of the COVID-19 pandemic, the work in this space is important as ever. And then I think also within the healthcare industry, we realize that, we have our best opportunity to develop these treatments and come together. If we think about this, not in isolation, but in terms of the companies coming together. So the plasma companies actually formed what we call the Convalescent Plasma Alliance to develop a hyperimmune globulin, or you may hear called HIG, we call COVID-19. And the alliance is really an unprecedented partnership amongst some of the world's leading plasma companies, spanning plasma collections, the development, the production, and ultimately the distribution. And at the end of the day, the goal is really very simple. It's if we can pool our resources from an R&D standpoint, if we can pool our understanding of manufacturing and our understanding of navigating the regulatory pathways, we felt collectively we could do that faster and bring a product to scale much quicker, and that was really important. In addition to Takeda, the alliance includes other global regional plasma companies, but it also includes partnerships with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, who's there providing advisory support to us, as well as Microsoft, who has really been instrumental and helpful in terms of our web or our e-presence in creating what we call the Plasma Bot, which really helps us from a donor recruiting standpoint and really helps those potential donors in locating the plasma center where they can ultimately, donate their plasma. I think for me, what's just so amazing about the alliance is rather than, individual companies pursuing, interest in the research is, everyone basically put aside, the individual nature of that and really came together for the better public good. And I think with that goal of really accelerating the development, really improves the chances of us being able to bring a product to market much quicker. The other thing that you also may hear reference when we talk about the Plasma Alliance is this campaign called The Fight Is In Us. And Takeda is involved in the Fight Is In Us campaign, which really urges convalescent plasma donations from COVID-19 survivors to help fight the disease by donating their plasma. And the campaign, if you're interested, is thefightisisus.org. You can learn more. around many of those efforts, and a lot of great partnership as well. It's another great testament to collaboration and working across multiple companies within an industry, but also across very different industries.
Yeah, Brandon, thanks so much. And I have to tell you that it's incredibly exciting to hear about the work that's taking place as far as the convalescent plasma collection, as far as the Fight Is In Us campaign. Really exciting work. Earlier, you referenced a relationship with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and Microsoft. For anyone who's not aware, Microsoft created a bot that will allow you to locate a plasma collection center that is within your geographical space. And that's one of the things that we found is very valuable to the community. Again, we mentioned the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. I guess it may have been a couple of months ago, we were able to make an introduction to members of NBCSL and the Gates Foundation to learn more about the Fight Is In Us campaign. So we're really excited about that. But Brandon, I was wondering if there might be any space for this community to provide some assistance. Can you provide any insight on anything that the community can do here?
Yeah, great question. First, I want to applaud the work of NBCSL in proposing a resolution sponsored by Georgia Representative Gloria Frazier to recognize the importance of convalescent plasma donation and the fight against COVID-19. We've also seen very similar efforts to help modernize and reform the plasma collection process in other states like New York, Massachusetts, California. And I know the team is committed to working closely with state legislators to ensuring that there is a sustainable plasma supply, not only during the pandemic, but as we continue to move forward with the needs and the overall demand of plasma-based products in the future. We desperately need plasma donations from those who have recovered from the virus. And as I mentioned earlier, their convalescent plasma contains antibodies that can help the immune system fight the virus. Interestingly, a study recently conducted around the first convalescent, plasma donations of about 8,000 Americans in the start of the pandemic. We don't have all the demographic information, but we do have it on about half the donors, and only about 2.5% of the identified donors identified as Black or African American. And yet, one of the other things we know is that plasma unit donations with the highest antibody rates are actually from people of color. And so I think there's a huge opportunity here in terms of being able to continue to fight COVID-19 amongst the community markets.
So Brandon, I really appreciate that. It sounds like we really need to make sure that we get the word out about these plasma donations. I think one of the things that I also want to share with the community is the safety of our plasma collection centers. They're staffed by medical professionals. Individuals who actually donate plasma have to undergo a series of screenings to ensure, one, that they are healthy enough to donate plasma. And we really try to make sure that we have provided a good environment for the patient in those instances. Are there any closing thoughts that you have on how we might be able to increase the number of plasma donors?
Yeah, and maybe just to build a little bit on our donation centers, which we call BioLife. We're very, very proud of our collection centers. BioLife, encourage anybody, if they have one in their local community, stop by, maybe after the pandemic. But it is we really think about the donor experience at all time, and you can find out more information on biolife.org as well. Maybe the last thing, Marcus, is I think we all realize the pandemic, kind of demands bold moves, and really proud of the plasma community that I think has a really special responsibility and opportunity to make a difference in the interest of the global public health. I think as we all reflect on the past year, I'm personally very proud about how this community has banded together, how we put aside certain differences in the name of, ultimately representing patients and the community in addressing the pandemic. And I think the partnerships and the collaborations that have been formed are just so important, not only in fighting COVID-19, but maybe also as we think about innovation for the future in solving so many problems that are still yet to come. What matters most right now, however, is for those who are working on any potential treatment, to collaborate, to share knowledge and resources that enable a solution. And I would argue a range of solutions. I think we need lots of options to address the growing pandemic. And that we really believe that, hey, by bringing together the brightest minds, having the ability to quickly share information, to leverage and collect resources and expertise, that we can achieve so much more, and we can do it quicker than working independently. So, with that, the collaborative approach that puts patients' interests first and puts the public health interest first as well in a crisis like this, we're really committed to continue to do the right thing for our patients and the community at large in face of the global pandemic. So again, really happy to be here, and really a pleasure as always. Marcus, thank you for the wonderful dialogue and questions.
Brandon, thank you so much. We're going to move next to Javier. Javier, one of the things that I've said about you amongst our is that you have DE&I in your DNA. So I'm going to ask you a two-pronged question, if you don't mind. The first thing, I'd like to know what your thoughts are on Takeda's commitment to DE&I. And then next, I'd ask if you'd share a little bit about what we're doing internally on the DE&I front.
Thank you, Marcus. I'll be delighted to talk about Takeda's commitment to driving a more diverse, equitable, inclusive, and accessible company while simultaneously building trust with the communities that we serve. As Uttara mentioned, trust has always been an integral part of who Takeda is and how we operate. Since the company started on the docks of Osaka by our founder Chobei in 1781, and today, 238 years later, Takeda is a top 10 biopharmaceutical company. And given the world that we live in, we believe that trust is more important than ever to become a company of choice for people of all backgrounds, especially those of historically underserved and underrepresented backgrounds. We subscribe to a modern standard for corporate responsibility that believes that investing in employees, delivering value to our customers, dealing ethically with suppliers, and giving back to communities are top business priorities, in addition to generating long-term shareholder value. So while shareholders' return is important at Takeda, we're looking at how we can invest in all of our stakeholders to build greater trust, which will drive our long-term business success. These priorities, ground every business decision we make, and we build our business by supporting patients and enhancing the trust and reputation of the company. A lot of pharma companies talk about patient centricity, but we are unique in the focus we put on building trust with society and enhancing the reputation of our company. Ultimately, we want to be a patient-trusted company. And I believe, Marcus, you wanted me to also talk about the internal focus. That's right?
Yes, please.
Okay, great. So I'm pleased to share that this year we kicked off the development of a comprehensive multi-year diversity, equity, and inclusion strategy, and have created a Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Council to govern and execute on the strategy. To ensure that we have the right leadership commitment, each member of the United States Business Unit leadership team is serving as an executive sponsor to one of the 8 pillars comprising our comprehensive approach. Today, we have more than 130 bright minds across the business who have raised their hands and volunteered to participate in the Diversity Council. And in doing that, they'll be co-creating on the strategy and championing diversity, equity, and inclusion within all aspects of the business. Oversight of this council is my responsibility, and for all council matters, and purposes, I report to the executive leadership team. Let me talk about the 8 pillars of the strategy, starting by highlighting the talent pillar. And in this pillar, we are looking at assessing and improving talent practices that help us best attract, recruit, engage, and retain the widest pool of talent. We already have multiple efforts underway to ensure that we have a robust measurement in place to properly assess the diversity within the organization. And we have also taken steps to improve all aspects of our talent acquisition and sourcing strategy. We will be building diversity, equity, and inclusion into all aspects of our talent management. And I'm pleased to say that pay equity has been and will continue to be a central part of our strategy. The other key pillar to this strategy is learning and development. And here, we provide tools and resources for our employees, managers, and leaders for how to build diverse and inclusive teams, as well as programming to enhance their acumen and dexterity with diversity, equity, and inclusion topics. The next pillar of this multi-pronged strategy is a focus on vendors and suppliers. We are looking to expanding our understanding of supplier diversity, evaluating opportunities for external partnerships and sponsorships, some of which you heard Brandon and Uthra talk about. Also, how do we consider diversity when it comes to our own charitable giving? It's part of the focus of this pillar. Together with this, we have attention to overall communications. How do we shape and drive a communication strategy internally and externally, specifically for the U.S. business unit that ties to the overall U.S. and the global strategy for the company. Marcus, this is the next pillar of the strategy is one that I'm sure resonates with you, will resonate with our viewers. And this is the policy and access. And this is about improving patients' lives by promoting policies and creating strategic partnerships that enhance access to underserved patient populations. And that goes together with the next pillar, which is sales and marketing, which is about ensuring marketing and sales resources, tactics, and execution that are appropriately representative and equitably serve the needs of our customers and patients. The next and last 2 pillars of our strategy are patient engagement and medical. The patient engagement is about understanding diversity of patients and utilizing patient support programs and evaluating opportunities to update those services, provide educational resources and communications to more equitably, again, address patient needs, particularly underserved patient populations. And the medical is having equity in the health sciences, patient participation, research, health, and medicines. In the near term, all of the teams that are leading these 8 pillars are completing their respective charters. And our plan is to have a full roadmap by the first week of December that will be presented to the executive leadership team. And the execution of the plan, of this multi-year plan, is scheduled to start in January of 2021. So we're very excited. We're at the cusp of great transformation around diversity, equity, and inclusion. Back to you, Marcus.
Javier, that is an incredibly comprehensive list of areas of focus, and I think that speaks to Takeda's commitment to DE&I issues. I want to kind of jump forward a little bit. I realize that we're coming on the bewitching hour. I was wondering if you can share some examples of collaboration where Takeda's been involved with issues that promote racial equity and racial justice.
Absolutely. I'd be happy to talk about those aspects, and we have many of those. So we have been a positive force of change within the industry and understanding that there are many challenges that require collaboration on our walls. I think Uthra spoke very eloquently about that. And the examples are, that our CEO, Ramona Takeda, president of the U.S. business unit, was incredibly proud to join other leaders such as MassBio in the pledge for equitable and inclusive life sciences industry. Together, all the CEOs and the signers of this pledge recognize that racial inequity exists and in our industry and in our companies, and that we must take responsibility to fix injustice through comprehensive approaches that are broad in scope, specific in action, and measurable. The other example that I'd like to highlight is the work that we've been doing tackling racism as a community in Kendall Square. Beginning this summer, I partnered with the Kendall Square Association and many other biopharma organizations in Cambridge to tackle racism holistically as a community. And this brought us together with KSA companies like Microsoft, Ipsen, the Draper Laboratory, MIT, ENCO, Turner Construction, the Broad Institute. So Takeda helped co-develop a 12-week professional development program focused on building anti-racist organizations. The program is currently running, and it has more than 200 leaders throughout the community. I hope you have a better understanding of how Takeda is committed to driving a more diverse, equitable, inclusive, and accessible company, but also building trust and partnerships with the communities that we serve. And Marcus, thank you for the opportunity.
Javier, I do want to ask you one more question, and I think this is a critical piece to our discussion with NBCSL. Different historical perspectives have often had an impact on African Americans' participation in clinical trials. There is a reticence to participate. There's just an outright decline to participate. I'm wondering if you can share any areas of focus that might be able to help us improve and increase the numbers of individuals that feel comfortable participating in clinical trials.
So I think the great work to highlight there is going to be announced later this week in an effort that Takeda has joined Pharma, which is our industry organization. And, I want to echo the comment Uthra made earlier. If you want to go fast, you go alone. If you want hard, you go together. And what you're going to see in that effort is that Takeda will be joining as an industry to establish new principles around engagement in clinical trials, particularly enhancing education about the role of clinical trials, increasing the awareness of clinical trials, and with these efforts, the idea is to target underserved patient populations so that build more trust and the diversity of those clinical trials by reducing barriers to trial access and participation, as well as using real-world data to enhance information on diverse populations. And lastly, I think the effort is about increasing information about diversity and inclusion in clinical trials overall.
Right.
That's. Go ahead, please.
I want to thank you so much. We really appreciate what you bring to the table for our company, and we look forward to seeing the positive trends that you're able to establish through your role with Takeda. With that said, we're going to go ahead and close our visit. I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about the void of research data when it comes to African Americans, when it comes to certain chronic conditions, when it comes to certain conditions that we have discussed on our visit today. And our ask of you is just, how can we help? How can we help make it a more comforting, a more inviting environment when it comes to clinical trials? What can we do? What type of ongoing dialogue can we establish? And would you be willing to participate in such ongoing dialogue to see what we can do to improve the numbers of individuals participating? It is very important that we do get participation because it is one of the, factors that allows us to see how a condition will impact a particular community. So with that, we'd love to show you our Covington facility. It is a crown jewel in our country right now. Lots of work that goes on in that facility. And so I'm going to pass it off to our person who's driving our slides, and maybe we can go ahead and get the video running.
Welcome to Takeda's Covington Manufacturing Facility, a world-class, state-of-the-art plasma manufacturing facility located 40 miles east of Atlanta, Georgia. The Covington facility is one of the largest ever biotech construction projects to be built in the United States and represented a total investment of well over $1 billion to meet the growing needs of patients around the world. The Covington site is an integrated campus containing more than 1 million square feet of building space, including 3 separate manufacturing buildings, multiple laboratories, a warehouse with cold and freezer storage, and utilities production, as well as administrative offices and a stunning, open, 2-story commons area. The Covington site will not only significantly increase our capacity for IG and albumin therapies, but also provides growth opportunities for years to come with dozens of acres master planned for future expansions. Covington is also our first fully integrated facility with plasma fractionation, purification, and aseptic filling and packaging taking place in one facility for our IG therapy. The project has been a massive undertaking, from clearing the land in 2012 to building 1.2 million square feet of facility, to commissioning, qualifying, and validating nearly every system and piece of equipment in the facility. At the project's peak, there were more than 2,800 people working on site. From the beginning, the team has followed and met a very aggressive schedule to stay on track to meet the needs of our business and our patients. Although remaining on schedule was crucial, the top priority throughout the project was ensuring that every worker remained safe and went home to their families at the end of each day. By combining the best practices of multiple construction management companies and forming a voluntary partnership with OSHA, the Covington project was able to maintain a stellar safety record, including receiving multiple safety awards, highlighted by a 2015 Safety Excellence Award from the Construction Users Roundtable. In addition to partnering with multiple design, engineering, and construction firms, the team also partnered with the state of Georgia to design in-depth training curricula and programs and onboard hundreds of employees. After construction was completed in early 2016, the focus quickly centered on getting the facility operational. The site received approval from the FDA in June of 2018 to commercially manufacture IG, culminating 6 years' worth of work. A few months later, site leadership hosted a grand opening celebration to recognize the amazing scope of work achieved by the thousands of employees and partners who made the facility a reality. But even more, to put the focus on the patients who depend on the life-changing work that will be done here every day.
As you walked into this building, you might have been impressed with the size of it or the thought that went into it. When I walk into this building, I see the people who are standing up here. These are the employees who make my children's medicine, the reason that my children have a future. Thank you to each and every one of you for what you do.